take on the darkness, stare down deceit. Murder in the headlines, justice in the beat. From cold case whispers to killers in disguise, we rip off the mask, expose all the lies. Facts like bullets reload and deliver. Truth cuts deep like a blade in a river. Corruption shakes when the mic goes live. We dig where others won't survive. Games rolling through the smoke. Truth hits hard, no time for a joke. Deceit, murder, we name every name. No restraint, no shame, just flame. Locked on the case, we investigate.
This is 12 Gauge Investigative. Let's jump in.
You'll ever need 12 Gauge Investigate. We make them bleed. No games, no censors, just truth. Justice is loud, and we're the sound. This is 12 Gauge Investigative.
Excuse me. All right. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. This is your boy, 12 Gauge. Thank you so much for this Saturday morning and everything about it. I already took the dog out. The dog was good. Dog is good. You know, I'm going to start a series. I don't know if it's going to be in sequence, but I'm going to start a series on psychological effects of people and unhealthy behaviors. I've done it before, but it didn't really catch on, I guess, because people were personalizing it. But the last thing that I ever want you to do is to think that my lives are diagnosing or personalizing anything that anybody does or says. But there are certain traits that are experienced from people that they might not even realize that's going on. And one of the biggest things that is in the true crime community as of late is many people are starting to use the mental health disorder for a way to get a lesser sentence or to even plea out. I was going to continue to mow today, but it looks like I'm going to get rained out. So if this live automatically just shuts off, it's because a storm is coming. And we're supposed to be under flood watch, not like anything like Kerrville, because we don't have any rivers and stuff close to me, but doesn't mean the town still can't flood, you know what I mean? So let's get on with this because I want to talk about this, and let me go ahead and put the fair use banner up here before I show this. This content is in fair use. The views and the opinions expressed in this media or comments on this channel are those of the speakers, which is myself, and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held on this channel's broadcaster. So this is for educational purposes only, so I hope that you guys enjoy this. And if we have time, I might go into the male narcissist. I've done so many on male that I thought that I'd be equal and do the female narcissist as well, because this is something that needs to really be discussed. Because just because you're an independent, empowered woman, and I don't want you to think that these views are misogynistic in any way, shape, or form, because, you know, there's a difference. Kind of like what I was saying last night. There's a difference in coming off strong and coming off obnoxiously overbearing. You know, just because you are an independent person, excuse me, just because you do have confidence, it doesn't give you the right to hurt other people with your words or your actions. You know what I mean? So that's when it becomes unhealthy. When you start hurting other people with your words or your actions, that's when it's unhealthy in any regard, whether it be you emotionally talking to somebody or talking down to them or whatever. When you start being hateful, that's a problem. And then people are going to say, well, you shouldn't be so sensitive, you shouldn't be so soft. not about being soft or sensitive. It's about having respect for another person, having empathy on what you're saying about these people, whether or not they're in your presence or whether they're not in your presence. You should still be mindful. And I'll be the first to tell you I've crossed that line many times in my videos due to retaliating towards people that I viewed were talking shit. you know, did that make me any better? No, I made a mistake and I try to overcome it. But at the same time, there's certain individuals that is their MO. The louder I am, the more snarky I am, the more good grief, the more contrarian I am, it equals strength. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. Strength is the ability to sit there and objectively look at something without having to be angry. I mean, anger is a secondary emotion, so there's something usually going on with people that act this way because something is being triggered. Something is being triggered. So I'll quit talking. I've been talking a lot now. Let's go ahead and talk about this. And turn the volume up.
I think this is a really important video to discuss so we can get into it, explore it, because most people, when they hear narcissism or narcissistic traits, they attribute it to males. But there are specific aspects of females that exhibit narcissistic traits, but often we're surprised by it. So maybe you'll be surprised by some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this video. So let's talk about female narcissists. Now, you may wonder if you're a female narcissist or if you're living with one. Now, let me help you out. And I'm going to provide some information for you to help you understand how to figure this out. Now, of course, this is not a clinical disorder. Female narcissist is not a clinical disorder. So we don't want to diagnose someone else or even ourselves. Now, we're going to talk about narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, and traits associated with it. But the point of this video is not for you to diagnose yourself, okay? But it's for you to build insight. Diagnosis should only be derived from a mental health professional. All right, now that we got that out of the way, narcissism is a personality disorder that has been the subject of many studies, discussions, breakups, estranged families, and so on, movies, all kinds of stuff. However, when it comes to female narcissism, the topic is often overlooked or misunderstood. The impact of female narcissism on relationships, particularly on finances and fidelity, is a crucial area that I think deserves more attention, and that's why we're going to dive into it. Now, narcissistic women tend to display an exaggerated sense of self-importance, entitlement, and a lack of empathy.
Okay, so there's the first definition, okay? And we're not going to check these off like a checkoff list, but if you see yourself exhibiting any of these behaviors, do yourself a healthy, life-changing thing. Do something about it. Nobody should have to call you on these things in order for you to change. Because people can call you on this stuff all day long. And most people are going to deny it. They're going to be, well, that's not me, blah, blah, blah. I'm just blah, 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 whatever the narrative might be. What's said, narcissistic women tend to display an exaggerated sense of self-importance, entitlement, and lack of empathy. And if you've been watching true crime at all, you understand what lack of empathy is when others display that. Lack of empathy says that you don't care how another person is affected because to you, you can't feel that in your own discretion unless somebody appears to be coming at you in that directive. So saying that means that you go through life hurting people because you're hurt. You know what I mean? So be careful of those individuals that are very self-entitled and make themselves be more important than they really are. Kind of like I said last night. As creators, none of us are really that important on YouTube. We have a platform, we have multitudes of subs, we have all this stuff, but really, how many people honestly come in and check us out on a daily? Unless you're on here 24/7 for hours and hours and hours, nobody's really going to catch your stuff. They catch you on replay, they catch you on stuff like that. But I'm speaking for myself. I know I'm not that important on these YouTube streets, and I never claimed to be. But I do know what I know. So I find it almost a civil duty to be able to talk on it, because there are a lot of things that go on these streets that are not even ever talked about. They're retaliated against, they're spoken on in hushed circles, but nobody ever really calls somebody what they are. And there are a lot of female narcissists in these chats. I mean, you look at the trauma. Need I say more? Need I say more? So here we go.
Now, these traits can lead to a host of problems in relationships, including infidelity, financial abuse, and manipulation. So we're going to explore the impact of female narcissism on relationships, and I'm going to provide insights into how to identify and cope with such behavior when you see this stuff. So grab a cup of coffee and join me as we dive right into the world of female narcissism and its impact on relationships. Now, there might be periods throughout this video where you're like, wait, that's the same as men. That's true. But the illustration and the presentation that we see in females that have narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder is different. And that's what we're focusing on. So let's.
And one thing that I want to say before he continues on, he just brought up a thought. I was raised by a single mom for a while in life. And she never became an angry person toward humanity. But at the same time, I see so many people use their path in life as an excuse to be who they are. And that's their prerogative. It really is. But like I was saying last night, most of us, if not all of us, have had a path in life that is unsavory, and most people would not understand it. But just because you've been hurt doesn't give you the right to hurt others. It doesn't give you the right to be contrarian on a platform where you could be doing so much good, but you use your experience in a negative way just to wallow around in a pen of mud with other people who identify with your pain. Nobody ever heals that way. Never. If you're going to use your life issues, which I've talked about mine, if you're going to use your life issues for people wanting to do better, then you give them solutions. You show them that you're actually growing. As unpopular as that is, nobody wants to sit around and wallow in mud all day long like pigs in the mud pen, wallowing around, throwing mud at each other all day long. Or maybe you do. But if you do, that's unhealthy. And it's sad because YouTube gets made fun of so much on these docuseries, anything that has to do with the mainstream media. YouTube is not even taken serious. We want to be taken serious, but we have so many people that put such a blemish on our community. Now, I could understand why they make fun of us, why they don't take our investigative skills as actually being credible. I can understand that. I get it wholeheartedly. But you know what? Unless there is a process of change, and that's what I'm trying to do in this series, it's to show that we are capable of being more than what we do on these platforms. Sure, we can get on here and we can blame people, we can be one-sided, and we can do whatever we want. But does that really ever help anything? All it does is feed the negativity. It feeds the demon. And you want to be taken serious? You want people to like you? Well, sometimes honesty is the best. It's the best medicine because you have a platform. Why not use it for something good instead of feeding into all the negativity of stuff that you know nothing about? Just because you feel that this has happened in your life at one point does not necessarily mean that everybody goes through that situation. Just like I know that me being a former drug addict, alcoholic, you know, people have the same isms, but doesn't mean that everybody who's ever dealt with that situation in their lives go through the same process. We can generalize it, but to say that this is it because I know this because of that, that's being kind of arrogant. It's kind of almost on the verge of narcissism. And sometimes we use our platforms for destruction rather than empowerment, no matter what you want to call it. And I see that every day on YouTube. You want people to respect you, but yet you never give them anything to respect. All they respect is the ability to be able to, for you to be able to identify with their pain, to identify with their misjustice of whatever situation they've gone through. But you never give them the other side of the bridge. And that should tell you that education is the key because most people don't know how to get there themselves without professional help. So those individuals who always talk about education doesn't mean anything, obviously it does, because if all you can do is sit there and wallow in the problem and never take your sub to the other side, then you're useless. All you're doing is being a voice for the voiceless with a megaphone on that says we're broken and we don't know how to change. So think about that a little bit.
Let's break down those 7 narcissistic traits. First, we're going to talk about appearance. Now, most females tend to be obsessed with their appearance, sometimes resulting in numerous plastic surgeries. Now, female narcissist is good at marketing herself, being the most charming person in the room, right? And you can't take that away from her because she craves attention.
There you go. Number 2, a female narcissist is good at marketing herself, being the most charming person in the room. You can't take that away from her as she craves attention. Look at some of these chats, some of these lives. How many people can you just jump into your head automatically about a female that craves attention? It has to be the most charming, funny, intellectual. But I'm not talking about self-esteem. I'm talking about over the top, where it's so over embellished that it's sometimes nauseating to listen to.
If you try to get in between her need for attention and recognition of that appearance, that's where you could cause a narcissistic wound. That's where she could push back. That's where she become aggressive. That's where she could start making fun of you in front of other people, perhaps people she just met. Remember that.
And we see that a lot in these chats. We see that a lot. Somebody doesn't even know you, but they base your comment, your post, your video, whatever it might be, and they use that platform to be that voice for that community that they exist in. You know, have you ever gone into a chat and you say something against what the other people are saying, not because you want to be contrarian, but because that's what your belief is, right? And you're told all opinions are welcome here, all this, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? But then all of a sudden, the mods attack you. They time you out. They say, we don't talk like that in here, blah, blah, blah. It's been done in my chat. You know, I've had to talk to my mods a little bit to tone it down. You know, we have to be better. We got to do better. Like I say in mine, you know, as long as you're not disrespecting the panel guests, as long as you're not disrespecting anyone in the chat directly, everything's welcome in here because, you know, who am I to say you're wrong and I'm right? Unless it is blatantly wrong, I'm going to try to say, look, let's look at it this way. Or maybe you should look at it a different way to get some kind of clarity. If it's so outlandish that we all know that fairy tales and and all those other things don't really exist. And I'm glad that that doesn't happen, because I have quite a few people that come into my chat that have their opinion. They're very hyperverbal, and I respect that as long as they're talking on what we're talking about on the panel. You get what I'm saying? Because it's so distracting whenever you take people off on your own tangent because of your own attention seeking behavior. So look at these chats sometimes. How many people do not like the attention to be taken off them? You ever notice that when you're doing a live as a creator, there's always somebody in there fact checking you? There's always somebody that's wanting the attention from the panel to be placed on the chat. That is narcissistic behavior, and it happens with men and women. So I'm not calling out women specifically, but I want you to think about this the next time that you go into a chat.
The disorder part of narcissism, that narcissistic personality disorder, is when you don't get along with folks, when it's disruptive to relationships. So if you have your narcissistic female and she's in a group of folks, right? She's impressing them with her new outfit and how she looks, and they're all like, wow, she really has it together. And you show up and you're just, coming along, seeing everybody's chit-chatting about things like that. And as you come up, you are dressed in, let's say, an even nicer suit, or you get the same attention that the female narcissist just did, right? And you have this nice pantsuit on, or you got this nice suit on, or you got this nice jacket, dress, shirt, blouse, I don't know, whatever it is, right? And then the group turns and says, oh, that's nice, that's nice. You're taking away her spotlight. And you have to pay for that, because that could become the narcissistic wound. That could be that problematic component. And that's why appearance is so central to the female narcissist, that they need to be recognized, and that the plastic surgeries, you don't see that in men as much. You don't see as many plastic surgeries in males with narcissistic personality disorder as you do in females. I'm not saying it doesn't happen for males, but it's different for females. And there's also this tendency of jealousy, this intense jealousy that you'll see.
This is a big one. A female narcissist is unreasonably jealous. How many lives have you ever watched? And I've watched countless, not just the one or two creators. I've watched all over the spectrum. And you hear certain female creators openly talking crap about people that have paid their dues, that are up there in mainstream media doing presentations. They make fun of Nancy Grace. They make fun of Annie Elise. They make fun of that Erickson lady, whatever her name is. They make fun of Christina Randall. They make fun of all these people. For whatever reason, they have a sense of jealousy and entitlement that they can't be them. And the lack of empathy just shows. It bleeds right through their lives. Many people can't understand that Brian they had lack of empathy. Well, now you should be able to get it, because it's front and forward in your face. It's right there in front of your face. You have these creators that are doing the same thing that Brian, we've been told, he suffers from. So you ever wonder how come they associate with the killers so much? Because they themselves don't have the capability to empathize what another person is going through, because it's self-serving. It's self presentation. It's look at me, look at me, look at me. And they either do that or they do the victim role, I've heard people say, well, you know what? You like my panel guest better than me. I guess I shouldn't even be up here. Whether they're playing or whether they're being serious, sometimes it really does sound serious. So think about that a minute. They're playing on the victim card. And victimization is a part of narcissism, whether you believe it or not. So victimizing somebody for the sake of whatever your self-gain is a form of narcissism. Because you believe in your head that no matter what I do, they're gonna give me what I want. And that's all about the narcissistic traits is being able to be getting what you feel that you want out of another person, place, or things. So be mindful of that. When people start victimizing, people call it grifting. But when people start victimizing themselves and they start saying, well, I guess I'm just not handsome enough, or I'm not, women say, well, I guess, I'm not wearing the right dress today, or, I'm looking kind of frumpy. And you can tell that they've made themselves up, or they're always messing with a part of their body to show a sense of taking off the attention from the fact that they don't know what they're talking about. So therefore, they're going to try to do a smoke screen and show you exactly how incompetent they really are about certain things. And you say, well, 12, how are you able to get up here and talk like you're talking? Well, I'm not talking as 12 gauge. I'm talking as 12 gauge therapist. There is a difference. If you can't tell, then, you don't know me well enough. But I'm not talking as 12. These are not opinions. These are not speculation. These are clinical observations, and they just bleed out. They bleed out all over the place. They they just hit me in the face. That's why a lot of times in the past I have been pretty upset at what I see, what I hear, and even tried to help people. I sent an email to a person, you know what, if you change your directive and actually use that for good, how many more people could you reach? But they didn't. They thought, well, you know what, he's trying to sabotage me. He's trying to not help me. But I wasn't. I was trying to help this creator and say, look, if you just used your platform for good, you would be helping so many other people as they're coming out with the same situation that you had to deal with. But they didn't do it. They didn't do it. They're stuck in their mindset that if we play the victim, if we play the downtrodden, or the person that is being wronged by society, then more people will flock to us. And that is true. That is true. Misery loves company. Who am I to argue about that? But you know what? You stay miserable long enough, you lose yourself, and you lose other people around you. And you should know that. Nobody wants to stay around somewhere where it's depressing all the damn time, where you're not talking about any kind of empowerment. All you're talking about is how bad you have it, how bad life is, and how bad these criminals have it.
In narcissistic females that are often associated or highly connected to their appearance. So we see that they certainly want to be recognized for their appearance, right? They want that attention to what they're wearing and their makeup and their hair and all this other stuff. And when they don't get it, then they get jealous. Remember, you just walked up to that group of other females, right, who noticed what you're wearing. And now she's jealous of you. And that could be part of what incurred the narcissistic wound. So now she has to make you pay for it. And she can embarrass you in front of others or make you cry or point out something that might be awkward about you. Even if it's not, she may still point it out to shame you, make you feel small. So appearance. So let's go on to our next one. Seduction. Now, your female narcissists use their bodies to allure a mate. Now, this can sometimes be seen in provocative clothing, but it's different.
Look at this one. How many of these female creators use seduction as a way to get subs? And I'm not talking about the way Leni was talking about the other day. She was openly talking about catfishing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about as you're sitting there, you know, as you're sitting there, you're trying to just maybe make your blouse a little lower, maybe focus on, you know, showing a little more skin, whatever it might be. So think about that. If you watch these creators that have more men in their in their lives than females, take a look at that a little bit. And I'm not saying that all people do it. Some people are comfortable with their bodies. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's some that are not comfortable with their bodies, and they seem to be selling an image that isn't comfortable to them. So there's two sides to everything that I'm talking about. I'm not so one-dimensional to say that I'm going to be speaking on this in one dimension, and that's all across the board, which is not. There are some good creators that actually are attractive, and they dress well, and they're appropriate in everything they do. They don't try to use sex as power. They don't try to sexualize their programs. You know, so the female narcissists use their bodies to allure a mate, and the same thing with males. You know, I've heard the fact that I wear a tank top, and some other people, I guess it bothers them. They think that I wear a tank top because I'm trying to show off something. Actually, not. You see how small the circle is? If I was trying to show something off, I'd be having a big ass square where you could see everything, and the presentation would be a small circle like this. You get what I'm saying? I don't try to bring about attention. I try to bring about awareness. And awareness is needed not only on these YouTube streets, but it's needed in society as well. Because you walk into a store, you walk into anywhere in society, you're going to bump into one of these types of individuals. And most of the time, if we stand up for ourselves, or we say something to kind of, deflect that anger or that rage or that snarkiness or whatever, then we're a misogynist. We're a woman hater. We have toxic masculinity. We have all this, that, and the other. So it's gone to like the other side. It just needs to kind of tone down a little bit. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being empowered, but damn, to be an asshole sometimes is not needed.
From histrionic personality disorder. Your histrionic personality disorder individuals, they're continually wearing inappropriate, revealing clothing, whereas a narcissist does it selectively for a specific person or to accomplish a goal. So it's almost like they're trying to hit this target, right? They're trying to identify this individual. And narcissists, whether male or female, usually will identify others, object of high value. That could be monetary. It could be attractiveness. It could be access to particular resources or clubs or bars or cars or whatever it is, some status level. And they'll use that seduction on that identified object of high value as they want to attach to that object of high value. So you see that where histrionic personality disorder individual typically doesn't do that. What that individual does is they will draw attention to themselves in a very dramatic way, in a very over-the-top way, whether it's using a lot of swear words, curse words, using very revealing clothing, or being very seductive, being flirtatious and coquettish and.
How many of you know people that get on this mic and cuss nonstop as a method of power and control? Or they get on this mic and they get very loud, and it's almost like, why are you yelling? What's causing you to yell at this moment? I get it, you want to drive a point home, but exactly what does the loudness emphasize that your point is any stronger than you just saying it? And part of the narcissistic trait, or part of the comment that they use, is, I'm just passionate about this. This is my passion. I just want justice. I just want the facts. No. Those are the reasoning behind in their head to give them permission to be who they are. And does it make it wrong? You be the choice of that. You that are watching, you be the objective voice in that. Is it a grift? Is it an act? Is it manipulation? Is it whatever? You be the choice. You be the one to make that choice.
That kind of thing, right? Touching your arm, right? When you say a funny joke, right? Like that. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. You get it. And so that seduction component. Now, female narcissists, they tend to lack this ability to process shame. They have difficulty apologizing even when they're overtly found guilty, particularly if it is in front of or anywhere in eyesight or earshot of that identified high status object.
A female narcissist lacks the ability to process shame, has difficulty apologizing when found guilty or wrong. Think about this. How many times have you heard, I was wrong with this aspect of this case? I was wrong with this aspect of that case. I made a mistake. I was wrong. If you can't apologize for anything that you've said or done that is not correct and you've been proven wrong, then you might have a problem. Especially if you can't do it in the eyesight of other people who might say, well, you know what? If they're big enough to apologize, they were wrong. Maybe I should be big enough and apologize for myself. I shouldn't be such a follower, but yet, if I respect this person for their words or for their knowledge, I should be able to apologize as well. And that doesn't happen very often. You know what happens? They flip the script and they start even blaming even more, start finding more loopholes, finding more avenues to be angry about. They don't ever apologize. They don't ever find a way to humble themselves enough to be human. I believe that some of these people created a YouTube channel to have an alter ego to say and do what they want when they can't do it in real life. It's kind of like the unempowered become powerful whenever they're not having to hold accountability. You know, it's kind of like, let's talk about domestic violence a little bit. It's kind of like the individual who gets out of a very violent relationship and doesn't get help. Well, guess what her next relationship is going to be? Another domestic violence situation, either by her own hands, even if she's not causing it, her words could be causing this. And chances are these individuals choose the same type of guy to be around. They know that this guy's unhealthy, but yet at least they know what's coming with this guy. It's going to build up until they put their hands on him, until they break something, until they're calling them names and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The individual that is back with this type of individual gets to play the victim, the sympathy, and all this other stuff from society because they have been wronged in a decision that they made. Think about this a little bit. How many relationships have you been in that you made a poor choice? Do you carry that everywhere you go? Everybody you meet, do you say, you know what? I've I've been married 2 times. I've had 5 failed relationships. They're all pieces of shit. I hate men, blah blah blah. They're all just after one thing, all this stuff. Do you ever say that? Or the men can do it too. Been married twice. I've had 5 failed relationships. All women do is just gripe and this and that and the other. You know what? Those should be red flags to you. If you ever hear anybody talking about past relationships in a narcissistic sense, it should be a red flag for you to either walk away because you can't help them. You can't. If you suggest something, they're going to turn on you because they feel that you're siding with the person who hurt them, even if you're not. You get what I'm saying? Like any kind of social instability equals in their mind that you're going against them. So their defense mechanism, their fight or flight, is already on 24/7. These individuals argue about every little thing in their life. Like I said last night, if everywhere you go there's a problem or something's happening to you, guess what? You're the common denominator. So the problem is you. And until people see that, nothing's ever going to change in their lives.
So they want to seduce that high object status. They want to move that person into their world. So then once they're close, then they feel like they can have more control over them. Then they can get what they have, and that will then feed that sense of narcissism, validating that sense of narcissism, validating that grandiosity, that sense of specialness. So it becomes this cycle where it feeds itself. And that's how narcissism is perpetuated. It feeds itself by these maladaptive patterns. Certainly seductive is one of them. Now, another component that I want to talk about is confidence. Now, you may be surprised to hear that. Confidence? What? Well, let me tell you. Females that are along the narcissistic spectrum, they gain their poise, that confidence, from comparing their superiority over others. Now, they feel good about themselves when others are beneath their own standards of excellence. They can point out what a failure they are. They can point out, just in that example, with all the women are impressed with their clothing and the other girl comes up. And when she shames her, she feels more confident about herself because she's feeding her narcissist. Her narcissist becomes this central component, right? It becomes that nucleus.
And what do people say? If you don't like it, just get out of my chat. Just get out of here. You don't like it. And I've said that myself. And that sounded so stupid when I was saying that, you know? But you practice what you see around you, and that's no excuse. I'm accountable for that. I was dumb. I was stupid. But you know what? I'm not a female either. But think about how many females block you, how many females talk down to you, make fun of. I saw this one go after this guy, and she said, well, it must be hard being you every day, not being able to think analytically. And for the greater good of humanity, I hope you don't procreate. I mean, that is kind of like saying, I'm smarter than you by articulating this sentence structure to make you look like an idiot. And this person has no sense of that educational value that they presented to the world. People have elevated this person because they assume that because they're able to talk like this, then that makes them credible. It doesn't make them credible. It means that they're able to be a shyster, be able to trick you into believing what they're saying based on their ability to use word salad. You know? How many times have you ever heard somebody say they're wrong about something on these platforms? Ever.
Of her sense of self. And she's feeding that nucleus. So it is growing, becoming stronger. And you see that she doesn't really pay attention to what else is going on because she's got this flush. Maybe it's a dopamine hit for her, right? She's got this flush of confidence over that other person that she just belittled. So it's this false sense of confidence. It's this maladaptive sense of confidence, because in an adaptive sense of confidence, it's that you can appreciate what that person who just walked up who's getting the.
It's almost like this. It's almost like these individuals were never accepted one way, shape, or form, or fashion. So what's a good way to be accepted? Get you a YouTube channel where other people think just like you. If you can tap into that pipeline, then you've got a show for life, because people can relate to your victimization. They can relate to your being bullied, or you having overweight issues, or you having issues with your spouse, or having issues with this or that and the other. They can relate to that. So they're going to tune in, not to get ways to get out of that, but for a new story, so they can all of a sudden feel a part of rather than part from. Because most people in life, they don't want to be lonely. They don't want to be by themselves. And if you hear somebody say, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, Cricket is good. Thank you, Leslie. She's laying on the bed right now, asleep. Um, so think about that. I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was talking about the fact that when somebody says, I don't care what anybody thinks about me, you need to really, that red flag needs to go up at that point because we all care what people think about us. If we have a healthy mindset, we do care because that gives us insight on how to treat ourselves and how that projects to other people. If you don't care what people think about you or say about you, if you really don't, then that gives you permission to treat other people the way that you feel that they treat you. It doesn't work. You still care because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be reacting the way you do. Does that make sense? Chat, am I making any sense here or am I just kind of just rambling? Because I'm not trying to ramble. I'm trying to really put common thought to logic. Because many people do say that. I don't care what people think about me. They can say what they want. But yet, if you didn't care, you wouldn't respond in comments. You wouldn't respond on the panel about how you're feeling about how somebody said or did you. Because you would have that self-esteem to know that either they're lying or they're telling the truth. So if they're telling the truth, it's going to cause ambivalence and you're going to go crazy on it. I've heard creators have a whole show over how they're feeling about how somebody talked about them or what they said or how they insinuated that this person was a certain way. So they had to do damage control because if your bread and butter gets an inkling that you're a piece of crap and you're just this or that and the other, guess what? They're going to fly away. Instead of really believing that the person you present on that camera is really you, you change yourself up every chance you get. Notice some of these creators, they're always trying to reestablish themselves or their persona. They're never the same person each time you see them. They're always having some kind of issue or some kind of maladaptive situation in their life that is bigger than them that they need help with. It's kind of like this morning. If I was going to get on here and say, you know what, everybody, we're under flood watch warning, so I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even have an alternate place to stay. If my house gets flooded, I don't have the money to get a hotel, or I don't have a way to get to my truck. I don't, if I put my Amazon wish list up there, y'all think y'all can help me out just in case this happens again? Because I'm really stuck. I didn't think beforehand, even though every place in the U.S. is flooding pretty much. How many of you would send me money for a hotel room? How many would send me? Don't do it, but how many would do that? If I was convincing enough to say, hey, I'm really stuck being cricketer here and we're scared and we don't know what we're going to do if the floodwaters get so high, we need to evacuate. You better not, Leslie. You better not, because that is not a need. That is not a need, but I appreciate that. But
Attention to
that
what
is
they're
not a
wearing
need.
or what is special or pretty or unique about them. But the narcissist doesn't, because at their core, those central components of narcissism is self-doubt, fear, guilt, inferiority, and shame. And it's those things that drive that narcissism. And you see this false sense of confidence. And it's a very maladaptive sense of confidence. And they belittle the accomplishments of those that they feel are beneath them so that they can have a sense of greater strength. In many ways, it's like Yertle the Turtle. I don't know if you ever read that book, But Yertle the turtle, he had to be higher, higher, and higher. And he wanted his subjects, his little turtles, to continue to make him bigger and stronger and grow taller so he could see more of his kingdom and more of his kingdom. But if you remember the book, and spoiler alert, but he gets so high that he topples over and he's covered in mud. And you don't want to be Yertle the turtle. But individuals with narcissism have poor insight, and individuals that are females that are along narcissistic spectrum also have that poor insight. So they don't see that maladaptive confidence and their behavior and how destructive it is. They just see that they're growing higher and higher and higher. And that's what they focus on. The next component that we're going to talk about is money. And money can certainly be like points. I've had clients that I've worked with along the narcissistic spectrum, males and females. And many of them have talked about how money equals status and power. So money is points. So the more points that I have, the more power and control I have, and the more I can manipulate or control other people's.
And you ever notice some of these creators, when they're talking about families of these victims, the first thing they attack is any type of financial attachment that these families might getting, some kind of assistance. There's a family that's been attacked multitudes of times for GoFundMes. There's, there's other families that have been in other cases that have had GoFundMe. They've been attacked. There might be families that are wealthier off. Oh, it must be nice to be rich. Oh, it must be this. And I mean, it's always about money, because you know what? If you're really looking, that's their focus. It's jealous. They're jealous. They're jealous of the fact that they are not where they should be or taking care of their business. It bleeds right through. I don't know how people don't see it. I don't know.
Lives. And that gives them that sense of power that feeds that narcissism. Remember, becomes this perpetual cycle of maladaptivity that keeps feeding itself. And money can be a huge part of that. And females that are along narcissistic spectrum, they just love excessively spending money, particularly on things that are very flashy. And even though there's no shame or remorse in how much they're spending or ruining their bank account, things like that, most narcissists don't have a lot of money. Most narcissists achieve very little. And this is in large part because they're spending so much and they're so afraid of achieving that they would rather sit back and are shrouded by that narcissism. And it creates this distorted image of self and others. So what they see is what they wear and not that debt that comes with it, and not that loss that comes with having to manage the bills, manage your spending. Because if you have to manage your spending, then you're certainly not a high status, special, unique person that you deserve to be. And that goes to that central component of narcissism, that maladaptive belief. So money is absolutely a component. We could even call it a trait because of the way that they do spend money, the way they recklessly spend money. And you see how destructive this is. So the next one that we're going to talk about is fidelity. Now, females along narcissistic spectrum, they act more like black widow spiders, and they're idealizing their mate to attract them and emasculate them. And for the spouse or partner, the more they give, the more the narcissist wants. And it becomes insatiable. It becomes you're always doing more. You're always trying to achieve more. You're always, because you're also held accountable for that individual's health, welfare, beliefs, happiness. But because the narcissistic individual is so external in their beliefs and in their view that external validation, that it all falls on you, that they put it on you.
How many times, if you've ever donated to any kind of any type of creator, how many times have they ever made a big long speech about not needing it but thankful that you're giving it? Things like that. I think it's terrible that YouTube gives you the opportunity to make any kind of money other than what they pay you, especially once you go monetized. These super chats and all this other stuff, it's just terrible because there's people that believe that they have to give these things in order to feel special in your chat, and that's terrible. That is a terrible thing. A very terrible thing. But you do with what you want with your money. But as far as anything else, I believe that they should take that away. And I think that a lot of the people that are on here just for money like that would go away.
That they're like, well, I'm not happy because you did this. And you're a horrible person because I feel this way because you did this. And the things you did could be very routine that most of us do, right? It could be something that, that you mess up, something that everybody makes mistakes. But your narcissist sees it as you being a failure. So being in this relationship, you then try to feed that relationship, make that person happier, but you can't. And in these cases, what happens is you see that they start to disengage and they can neglect, abandon, or punish their partner for these things. And that's where the fidelity comes in, because then they see a higher status object than you. So they go out and they find somebody else to be with. But all that is, it just takes them up one more step, because eventually, they might leave you, right? And then they go to the next step. And that next step, eventually, that maladaptive narcissism rears its head again, and it becomes destructive again. And it becomes to eat away at the relationship. And it'll fit that pattern, or the partner will get fed up with it and it'll cut it off and be like, you're gone, forget it. Because what you're also dealing with under that component of fidelity is these unpredictable moods. And it can be due to pride, this excessive pride, or even other traits or other issues that might be going on, because narcissists, they don't open up about what they really want because there's great fear. Because when there's truth inside them, that if someone knows that, they could use it against them. If they use it against them, that could be the power play that they do with others.
And that is a criminogenic need. That is a criminogenic need that most people who are in this light, they have that ability to make you believe that since you helped me once, you should help me from here on out. Like, have you ever, let's use a kitten, okay, or a cat. They always say don't feed a cat or don't feed a dog or whoever. Don't feed them because they'll keep coming back, right? Expecting it. So if you do the same concept with a human, the same thing happens. You help somebody out one time, they're going to come back a month later asking for more help. And then a month later asking for more help. And then asking for more help and more help and more help. And before long, you're going in debt because you're helping somebody else who is already in debt. So it just, it's almost a bottomless pit. So sometimes it's okay to say no. Most of the time, it's okay to say no. If I had all my cash app stuff flowing across the bottom of the stage here, do any of you in the chat ever really notice that? Or do you notice it long enough to say, well, I'm not paying you nothing? Or if I had it planted all over the backdrop, if I had Cash App as my backdrop, would you be like, oh, I think subliminally, I need to support 12 because he's going through a hard time. We all go through hard times. That's what the point that I'm trying to make. You should not try to control another person because of your situation in life. We all go through hard times. Groceries are high, gas is high, mortgages are high. You know? It's a tough time. But as an adult, and many of these people are older in age, they should know how to govern their lives by this point. They should not use narcissism as a point of reference on how to govern their lives. they should not be asking for a handout. I went into a parts store the other day, and there was a gift jar there, and it said, "Help Ed get his new transmission. He needs $1,200." And there was actually a tip jar for this. I was thinking to myself, I have never seen such. One, I don't know Ed. Two, who's to say there is even an Ed? And three, how do I know that he needs a new transmission? You get what I'm saying? How many of you would donate it to Ed for a new transmission? Let me know.
That they don't want done to them. So it really becomes this opposite component, right? This self-destructive and relationship destructive pattern that I've seen many times in clients that I've worked with that have developed this maladaptive pattern. Infidelity becomes such a big issue. Narcissists, I believe they're at a higher probability to, of course, commit adultery, to cheat, but it doesn't mean that they all do, right? We don't want to have absolutes. We don't want to split on this, right? You just want to be aware that there is that higher tendency because of what I talked about before. It's always going to that higher status object, that higher status person who has more, who can provide more, or so they believe. Because for them, the grass is always greener. Now, another component that we see in parenting, that parenting style. So we could say children is the next component, right? Or that it's actually, now children isn't a trait, but parenting can be a culmination of several traits. And narcissists like to raise baby narcissists. Now, often they pick a favorite child and focus all of their efforts and attention on that special child. The other children are left to feel inadequate, unworthy, and insecure. And females often view their children as an extension of themselves, even when the child is an adult. So everything the child accomplishes is a reflection of their own superior parenting. And you see the female aspect. It's an odd sense of mothering. And when I say odd sense, is because there tends not to be a lot of emotion transference there. What we see is a lot of achievement orientation. It's very cognitive in many ways. It's very achievement based as to if you achieve this, well, then you're worthy of my love. But if you don't, then I don't. And really, what is your value anyway? Because any failure or mistake you make, that is illustrative of the failed narcissistic parent. Now,
I hope this has made sense because, I mean, it goes a lot more deep. And if you don't understand the generalized concept, you might not get it. But that's okay. Go back and watch it. Go Google the word you don't understand. Educate yourself on what a narcissist really is because believe it or not, it gets overused. Like somebody said in the chat, narcissism does get overused. Not everybody is a narcissist. Some people are just rude. Point blank. They're just rude. They're angry, rude, unhappy, annoyed. And those type of people need to get themselves in check because they're projecting something that they need to work on, but they're too focused on other people to work on themselves. And calling them out is not going to get them to change. It's really not. Getting angry with them is not going to get them to change. Shaming them is not going to get them to change. People are just going to roll with the punches because they've gotten used to the jacket that they wear. And like I said last night, broken people see through broken glasses. How could you ever expect to get more from someone who's broken than what they represent? But they don't need to be hateful or rude. And just because you laugh about it or you say, well, you don't need to be soft, doesn't mean that excuses your rudeness. Doesn't excuse your temperament towards other people. It doesn't. And if that's the best you can give the community, maybe you need to rethink your platform. Because there are a lot of great creators that if they change their moods, they change their ability to focus and worry about so much what other people had to say about them and just went with the flow, They might have a very successful platform, but they're scared to do that. They're scared. They're scared to go against what got them started to begin with. Think of all the music that you've ever heard, your favorite bands, that one album that just stuck out above all the others. And then after that, you kind of lost interest a little bit, but you still liked them because you were expecting that same album and it didn't happen. It wasn't later on until their career that they put out another album that was just like that. Because you know what? You can't replicate the same thing over and over before people get bored of it. Whether that's happiness, whether that's annoyance, whether that's narcissistic, angry behavior, whatever it might be, people get tired of that. And after a while, they go looking for something else. And in general, most people want to be happy. They don't want to be downtrodden or depressed when they go to a live. They don't want to hear about your problems. If they do, then, it makes their problems not so bad. If you're getting beat and I'm just getting choked, hell, you're worse off than me. So I can relate to you, and I'm good until I'm getting beat and you're only getting choked. Then I'm going to get pissed off. You get what I'm saying? So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation this morning. Like I said, it's not always a popular one, but I'm going to continue to do little bitty lives like this to try to spread awareness, nothing else. Because honestly, people are going to be who they're going to be, and no matter how much you call them out on their stuff, it doesn't equal change until they're ready to change. And most people have been living this way a long time, and it's hard for them to even see the forest for the trees. Y'all have a wonderful Saturday. I'm about to go weed eat. I got to go get me some new string. Hopefully something that's strong enough that it doesn't need changing every 5 minutes. That drove me nuts yesterday. By the way, Leslie, if you're in the mood, send me a brand new riding lawnmower. I could use one. I really need to mow my grass, and it's so high up. Yeah, I would send that lawnmower right back. But Leslie, you and everybody else in the chat, I hope that y'all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And try to be kind to yourself, because some of you give more to other people than you give yourself. Be kind to yourself. And I will be premiering the part 3 and 4 of the Idaho docuseries from Prime. Be looking in the community page if you want the link to the Discord. We will be doing that probably about 8 o'clock tonight. That sounds good. I could use an omelet. Y'all be awesome, okay? The Steel brand. All right. Thank you. Y'all be awesome, and I'll see you soon. Maestro, cue that music.